And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough. Yeah.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
I mean, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Well, let's get it rolling on this Friday. Man, this week flew by. We've got a lot to get to. We'll talk some NFL Combine, this day in Tennessee sports history, stat of the day as well. And we'll also get into, I don't know, maybe perhaps a little bit of Will West. We love visiting with Will West, who joins us now of the Sports Animal. He's on from 3 to 7 every afternoon. Will, how are you, sir?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we always appreciate it. Caleb, how are you? Caleb gets really mad if I don't ask how he's doing.
He doesn't. He never asks how I'm doing. I'm doing good. I'm doing good, guys.
Hey, Will, obviously the talk, and I want to get into some specifics here, but the talk this week was of Ricky Gibson. I heard your show, and it just seems like he has all the leverage, and I don't know how that changes.
Oh, I think.
We still have Will. Will froze up.
I think you froze up on us.
Will's being incredibly still. We'll get Will back. Caleb, what we got coming up today?
All right, we got a big show. We've got Tennessee's SP Plus rankings are shockingly high. The Vols' path to a 1 seed, and James Pearce Jr.'s 40 time. Defensive line spring preview. Kalen DeBoer makes some comments. It's just Alabama's in trouble, and the Lady Vols get blown out by Kentucky as their worst loss of the year. We'll get to that. I believe Will is actually back now. I see him moving on the camera off the screen. Do we want to try to bring him back in?
We got Will. Will is with us.
Sorry,
How are
guys.
you, sir? It happens.
Yeah, doing well.
Let's get to today's tough question, Will, if that works with you. And please don't notice this zit I have on the end of my nose. Today's tough question is brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Today's tough question deals with a guy named, I don't know, James Pearce?
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Will, let me ask you this. We now know that James Pearce put up a pretty impressive 40. What was that again, Caleb?
It was a 4.47 40 time. Not 4.7, 4.47.
Okay. So today's tough question, James Pearce, was he a disappointment at Tennessee, Will?
I would say no. He was not a disappointment in Tennessee. I don't think anyone expected this out of James Pearce when he came to Tennessee. So I think that he was a pleasant surprise. I do think sometimes when we start looking at advanced analytics a little too closely, you forget who a player actually is. So when we're looking at havoc rate and things like that, it doesn't mean that he's beating his lock every time, sets a good edge, things like that, has his pass rush lane where it needs to be. I do think there were times James Pearce saved it for the league, and that's part of it. I think a little bit when it comes to college football in this day and age, but I don't think that he was a disappointment. I think he played really well. I think he is still a guy who is a raw prospect. He's still kind of thin for a hand in the dirt defensive end. So I wonder, is he going to be in a hand in the dirt defense at 245? That's fine, but when he was 235 pre-combine training, I do think that's a little slim for hand in the dirt defensive end. But he's not a guy that's really ever played in space to be able to play kind of a stand-up outside linebacker role. So I don't think he was a disappointment here at Tennessee. I think we saw 19.5% havoc rate, 20% pass rush win rate. And then I think we kind of thought, oh, well, that means he's great at everything, whereas he's a very, very good pass rusher who came along and learned to do some other things in the run game and things like that.
Yeah, well, I'm leaning your way too, and I want to add this, and I mean, dare I bring this up? are we kind of overrating somewhat what James Pearce was able to do given his physical attributes? Because look, I'll just be honest with you guys. Not that speed's not important for an edge rusher, but I mean, I think speed at the sacrifice of power may not be the most valuable thing. And James Pearce is a little thin. I mean, wouldn't you rather him have 20 more pounds of muscle and a second added onto his 40 time if you had the choice?
No, absolutely.
A second, not a second, sorry, a tenth of a second. Excuse me.
Yeah, a tenth of a second. I know.
Backwards.
Yeah, no, I think that you could even, if he was at 4.62 and at 265, I think it would help him a whole lot more. 4.58 at 265, I think that would help him a lot more. 245 though, I think that gets the job done because there are a lot of guys that are playing at about 245 right now. It's also it is a different day and age where we're seeing having the great edge rusher is not nearly as valuable as having the depth of edge rushers right now. And so I think you'd rather be where the Eagles were than the Steelers were, even though TJ Watt is a fantastic player. Look at Myles Garrett, right? Myles Garrett is a generational talent who's a 4-time All-Pro. If you don't have everything else around them, you can go 4-13. So I don't think edge rusher, I think we're learning that depth at the edge is more important than having a great edge rusher. But I think the biggest thing for Pearce is, I mean, like the Vanderbilt game, that Pavia touchdown early was just him blowing it. You know what I mean? It was just him not setting an edge and not doing his job. And so I think that are you a situational pass rush specialist, or are you a guy that plays the edge every single down in, down out? I think at 245, you can set that you can be a guy that's out there most downs. I think at 235, you're probably a situational pass rush specialist. So I'll agree with you on that. The thing that jumped out to me as well for James Pearce wasn't just the 4.47. That's great. It was the split, the first 10-yard split. But then did you see the vertical leap? 31 inches. That was the first one. We were on the air. That was the first, combine measurement that I saw the people post. And I saw 31 inches. And I'm like, boys, I'm 48 and I can do a 31-inch vertical leap right now. You know what I mean? So like I get after it in the gym a little bit, but like that's not good. You know what I mean? And then you saw other edges at 40 inches. You saw 40 and a half for Landon Jackson. You saw one defensive tackle at 37 inches. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to go well for Pearce. And then he runs like that. So I think it shows you what his top end athletic ability can be. But I do wonder about his suddenness as far as explosiveness. I think he showed enough in college. But when you see a 31-inch vertical leap, that is really jarring to see a guy who's that fast, who has that little explosiveness, at least vertically.
It makes me think, after covering pro days for years, it makes me think he didn't work on it a lot, which is an indictment maybe of his work ethic a little bit. And that's not something you want to have floating around NFL scouting discussions.
Maybe, or adding the 10 pounds is just,
Okay.
he's not as explosive with that 10 pounds on him. So then it makes you wonder, is he really a guy that's going to play at 235? And if he plays at 235, is he out there for 3 downs? As an outside linebacker, I would say yes. With his hand in the dirt, I mean, and I know it's kind of positionless a little bit in the front seven these days, but I do wonder, it's going to be a really important question. Is he just a fantastic third down pass rush specialist, or is he a guy that plays all 3 downs, or is he a guy that can stand up, play it the way he's at right now, but he's going to have to drop it a pass coverage a good bit?
Guys, you realize we're talking about a guy who the world is blown away by him yesterday with his 40 time, and we're out here talking about how there's some other about his drawbacks to a certain degree. It's like, are we losing perspective? But throwing that out there, Jordan Ross, who, and well, I've actually had this conversation with Dave, and I want to know your thoughts. Jordan Ross is not as fast as James Pearce. I've kind of told people I think he actually will be better than James Pearce, though. If you look at him in the dirt, the little bit I saw him play last year, his raw ability, I think, his ceiling's even higher than Pearce's. What are your thoughts on that?
It could be. I don't know. I need to see what he's capable of doing. I think Pearce, for me, Pearce is a high floor player too. And I don't know where Jordan Ross's floor even is to say where his ceiling is. Because if Pearce can play explosively at 245, or he can play at 235 in space and drop into coverage, we saw the Iowa interception, right? If he can add that to his repertoire, I think because of what a freak athlete is, his ceiling is higher. But I think Ross may end up having a position where he could be the better player because he's able to stay on the field every down if Pearce can't play at 245 or play at 235 in space. And I would say your point's spot on, Caleb. The one thing that always gets me, though, is just over the years, I mean, we've all done this a while. Don't you notice that the hype's usually always wrong, right? Like the hype is that what everybody's all fired up about on Twitter is usually the wrong thing. So I try to not let that sway me. However, 447 is hard to not get impressed by, right?
No, that's pretty good. Now, I heard you guys talking about it, and I think we may have discussed it in the segment you have with me. I can't really remember, but the Pearce not talking to the media, and he finally talks. Is that a big deal, you think, in scouts' eyes that he didn't talk to the media while he was at Tennessee?
What it depends on why he didn't talk to the media. Look, if he's just a super introvert, that's one thing. If he gets nervous, that would concern me. Because like I am a Giants fan. I'm unfortunately wearing this hat. But if the Giants draft him to try, look, I don't think he's gonna. They're not. No one's taking him third. But I think if it's not him, it's the position. But if the Giants trade it back up because they see him at 24 and say, we need another edge rush opposite Burns, I wonder what the New York media would do, right? Like, I wonder, we've seen some guys in Detroit and New York and LA that can't handle just getting pounded like the local media will pound you at times in some of these markets. So I wonder, is it a nerves situation that would concern me? If it's he's introverted like Marshawn Lynch and didn't like doing that kind of thing, I don't know that would be the end of the world to me. I do wonder, is that everything when it comes to the character issue question, is that he doesn't talk? It's weird that he didn't talk, though. It made no sense that he didn't talk. Like I've had, Eric Kane was like, well, Darnell Wright didn't talk. I'm like, he talked some, though. He didn't talk a lot, but he talked. James Pearce never showed his face in front of the media, like it one time after a bowl game ever. That's weird. Like it doesn't mean he's a bad kid. It doesn't mean that he's not going to make it. But then you start asking, does he have issue with nerves? And what happens in a big spot if you need him to go make a play? Are his nerves going to get to him? If he's getting crushed on social media, is that going to bother him? If the media is just peppering him with tough questions after maybe if he ends up having to drop into coverage and gets beat on a touchdown, how's that going to affect him? Those are the kind of things that I kind of wonder about this with James Pearce. And I also think there were times he saved it for the league. And I think that is the thing. Look, it didn't bother anybody with the Bosas, right? They still draft the Bosas. But I do think there are times that there's a difference between, hey, I'm locking it up because I'm dealing with an injury, and I don't want to go back out there against Ohio State because they're hitting hard. Those are two very different things.
Yeah. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, the thumbs up. We greatly appreciate that. I know Caleb is going to close us out on this topic. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
Go, Caleb.
Yeah, so and as Dave and I have talked, there's some personal things that have gone on in James Pearce's life over the last year that we don't need to share, but he's going through a lot. Isn't the good news though that if there's one position where you're allowed to be quiet and just do your job, it's edge rusher. I mean, it's not, we're talking about this, just a quick story. I was watching First Take yesterday and they were talking about Kevin Durant's legacy, and the defense of Kevin Durant was, well, he just wants to do his job and go play basketball. But the issue with Kevin Durant's whole career has been like, yeah, but as the best player on a team, he's got to be a leader and vocal. Well, James Pearce doesn't have to worry about that, does he? If you're an edge rusher, you just got to do your job. You have one job and do it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I would agree there. And I also think with Pearce, he's doing everything he can to combat that, right? Like, so he did, for the people I know that are at the combine in the media, he's doing the rounds. And he's and playful things too, which is something I think that shows, one, it will grow him, right? Like, that's one thing. I mean, you guys know how it is. You're interviewing athletes. God bless you. It's a lot better now than it ever was. Now that Tennessee does the NIL and the media training classes that they could take as electives, and they offer them just, you can go get this training, and and the people they have doing that, they brought me in for one of those, and it's unbelievable. So but you know how it is. Like, you feed them something, softballs or fun or fluff, and there was the CBS Sports thing he did for CBS Sports HQ where They found out he's a pescatarian, so let's rank the top 5 fish to eat. Things like that will help him grow as someone who can speak to the media, because we've all been there when you start talking to a kid and they just shut down and you're like, oh gosh, I got to carry this kid through that. Or there have been times that in the past that somebody I know at UT, if they bring an athlete over to us, will say, hey, this guy's super nervous. Can you help him out? And I'm like, yeah, I can help him out. It's fine. And so I think doing things, the more he does things like that, the better it will go for James Pearce. But it seems like whoever his team right now is doing a very good job attacking that narrative about Pearce.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, are you good, Caleb? All right. Bank on It brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Tennessee's basketball team will get a number 1 seed if they beat Alabama. Are you banking on that, Will West?
No, I am not. I think you're in the driver's seat for it, but it still matters what happens in the SEC championship and other conference championships, because I think Houston's locked in. I think that, so Iowa State, let's see how healthy they are. If Iowa State makes a run in the Big 12 tournament and wins that, I don't know that 3 SEC teams are getting a 1 seed. I don't believe 3 SEC teams need a 1. I don't think, look, I am of the belief the SEC is not nearly as good as everyone's saying it is right now. And I just think the SEC has a lot of good teams. I don't think there's a great team in college basketball, and the SEC is by a country mile the deepest conference in college basketball. I don't know that there's an elite team this year, but I think if you beat Bama this weekend, I think that you probably, and you get to Saturday, I think you're in. But I think you probably need to get to Saturday if you're Tennessee to be able to make sure you lock down that 1 seed, because you don't know what's going to happen with some of these other conferences, right? St. John's runs a rough shot through the Big East tournament, but Tennessee gets knocked out in their first game in the SEC tournament. I don't know that the Bama game is going to save them. If Iowa State knocks off Houston and runs all the way through the Big 12 tournament, I don't know that just one of the Bama games going to be enough. So I still think you have work to do, but you're in the driver's seat.
All right, well, I'm going to push back a little bit, and here's why. One, it's not just if they beat Bama, it's if they win out. Now, you assume they'll win at Ole Miss. They'll beat South Carolina at home a week from Saturday. So the kicker will be Ole Miss on the road. Can be a tough game. But if they win out, I think they get a number 1 seed no matter what happens in the conference tournament, because, Will, I think you are thinking too highly of the work ethic of this selection committee. I think they set their seedings before the conference tournaments begin, and they only alter it if someone wins the tournament who gets an automatic bid who wasn't going to get it. I've seen that too many times, which is why I don't know how you feel about this, Will, but that Tennessee-Mississippi State game in last year's SEC tournament, I'm not saying Tennessee threw the game, but Rick Barnes basically said, jack a bunch of threes. If they go in, they go in. If they don't, we go home and we prepare for the NCAA tournament. I think that was his strategy. I think they have shown the last 3 years that they don't base any seeding on the conference tournament whatsoever. What are your thoughts on that?
That may be true. It may be true. There's a lot of laziness in selection committees. So your point is incredibly valid. It could happen. I like the last time we had 3 seeds, 3 teams from one conference that were 1 seeds. I was like Patrick Ewing, like it was just elite teams.
These days, I love that.
I mean, it was like it's. I mean, those were just ridiculously elite teams. There might not be an SEC starter or an NBA starter in the SEC right now. Like not on Tennessee's team, not on Auburn's team. The conference, Asa Newell's probably the best bet. So I would like to think like quality matters, but you have a good point. It might not.
And also, let's not forget this, though. If Tennessee wins out, there wouldn't have to be 3. There could be 2, because I would assume Auburn and Tennessee would be the 1 seeds. Because I think in the Nets, Tennessee, even though they have 1 more loss than Florida, they're actually ahead of Florida in the net rankings right now. So
yeah, no, that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. Now will the committee go by that alone, or how will they run it? But your point is unbelievably valid, Caleb. So I think you may have convinced me that, oh yeah, they're going to be lazy. So there's that.
Well, yeah. And so if you're Rick Barnes, Will, do you exert that much effort in the SEC tournament? I mean,
I would. I would try to play. The biggest thing I'm trying to do if I'm Tennessee is I'm trying to get some level of offensive efficiency. I think this is outside of something crazy happening. The Grant, the Admiral years, Tennessee could have won the national title, but things would have to break their way. Guys would have to shoot better than they normally do outside. Last year's team, You could. Dalton was going to have to go for 40 again whenever he played UConn and Purdue and get some help for you to be able to beat those teams because those teams were elite. This year, I don't think there's ever been a better chance for Tennessee to win a national championship in basketball. I don't believe you can do that running that old Gene Katie, Kirk Ferentz version of basketball that Rick Barnes has been doing the last few weeks. I think that it's good to win games. And don't get me wrong. Winning is winning, and you're not going to lose your mind over winning, and I get why he's doing what he's doing. You started this non-conference season playing in space, and it looked like the Boston Celtics in the playoffs last year where you would push the ball up court, whether it was a make or a miss. Guys would get into their spacing immediately. Couple quick passes. Either somebody have an open three, somebody cut to the basket. You brought in Igor Milicic because he plays in space. You brought in Chaz Lanier because he plays in space. And I know you've had 2 injuries to JP Estrella and Cameron Carr's gone, but you're still 8-9 deep. Like you played 9 guys against A&M. You're 8 deep. There aren't going to be 10 teams in the entire 68-team field who go more than 8 deep on a regular night. Play in space because you cannot win a national championship unless you have an NBA starter who scores 20 points a game, and Tennessee does not. Nobody else in this day and age, you go home early when you play games in the 60s. That's just what it is. So if I was Tennessee, I would be trying to work on being more efficient offensively because when Tennessee loses, we all know what the story is. It's the 2 guards, you play super slow. You're trying to win like Mark Stoops tries to win football games, and your guards shoot you out of games. And that's what's going to happen if you don't, to me, play in space where you can get everybody else with the team more involved. It also just seems Chaz Lanier is so much better when he plays in space than when they slowly drive it up. And he has to have a night like he had against A&M for Tennessee to be able to beat good teams. But I think when they play in space, I think they could win the whole thing. And I don't know if I've ever believed that about a Tennessee basketball team in my lifetime.
I'm a firm believer, and I said this on your show, that Tennessee is viewed as, and by the way, David says, like and subscribe, y'all. Please hit that thumbs up as Will West from the Sports Animal joins us every afternoon from 3 to 7. I'm a firm believer that for one of 2 reasons, and I'll give you a couple, Tennessee's viewed as a football school, or Tennessee has historically flopped in the tournament, that they don't get the benefit of the doubt. In other words, if they should be a 1 seed, they're oftentimes a 2 or 3. I've seen them projected to be a 3 or 4 and fall to a 7 or 8. And the other factor is you've got Rick Barnes there. So second round Rick, if you want to call him that, I just don't think the selection committee, when it comes down to it, will give Tennessee the benefit of the doubt. Am I onto something, or is that conspiracy time?
I think Caleb's probably more right in that they'll lazily put Tennessee at the top. I also think, look, the one thing we got to remember, they're not watching these games, right? That's something I feel like I learned this year, and I've suspected it. And then when I watch the college football playoff situation play out, I'm like, oh, these dudes aren't watching games. Because think about how long it takes to watch games. You can't be a sitting athletics director, and you're not an 80-year-old retiree, and you're sitting there watching 25, 35 hours a week of basketball games. You're not doing it. So I do think there's a level of laziness that will or groupthink that steps in, but it's permeated college sports total. I mean, Travis Hunter winning the Bednarik Awards, the literal stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And you know what I mean? And my people are hillbillies, so we've done some dumb things. But there is this groupthink that has happened lately where I think Caleb is probably right, where the lazy thing's going to happen. And I think that Tennessee's ranked here. Let's just Tennessee's net ranking, put them as the 1 seed, because otherwise you'd have to watch games and actually do your job.
Yeah, well, let's throw this out there. I get if you're Tennessee, you never had a 1 seed, you want to make history. But Dave and I had a debate 2 weeks ago and settled this with us. If I'm Tennessee, I'd rather be a 2 seed playing in the Atlanta bracket than a 1 seed playing in the Washington bracket, honestly. Just because a home court advantage.
I don't know that matters that much, but the one thing that I've looked at, like as far as location, I don't know if location would matter to me as much, especially with this team as old as they are. But the one thing that and fans, it'd be good for fans for that to happen. That 5 line, when I'm looking at bracketologies, if Lenardi and Palm and those guys are right, that 5 line looks rough right now. That 7-10 matchup looks a lot, especially some of those 10 seeds. I feel like if there's one place that it seems like everyone's underseeded, like there was one on last weekend that was Tennessee played the winner of Oregon and BYU. I don't want any part of BYU if I'm Tennessee, because my guards if somebody else is hitting 3, my guards like to go match, and BYU hit 18 threes 2 nights ago. I don't want any part of that. So I think from the matchup standpoint, it might be better for them to be a 2 seed. If you can get the 1 seed, to me, you go get the 1 seed and then play it out. I don't know that the location's going to matter as much, but because again, to me, it's just, is Tennessee going to play efficient, 2000s offensively, or are we going back to the 1980s? If we're going back to the 80s, they're going home, and that's just what it is at the end of the day, unless they get a lot of help when it comes to the teams that they face.
What you're saying is Will is disrespecting the legacy of Gene Hackman because he doesn't want to lose his offense.
That crap ain't working.
I don't want to go there. Michael, by the way, says Hooker sits on the screen while Caleb and Will West drinking something sour from his face. It's tea, and I'm picking at my nose. I'm insecure because I have a zit on the end of my nose, Will.
Nobody can tell.
Really?
Yeah.
I look like a drunk from the Christmas Carol or something.
No, it's nobody can tell. Yeah, but you never, like, in this day and age of streaming, it's kind of whatever. The fact that I don't have pajamas on for you guys right now is a win.
It has evolved throughout the week. Caleb is seeing this thing on the end of my nose. It's gotten bigger, and now it's a little bit more focused down. So I'm glad. I think Chaz Lanier has been underappreciated. He was the SEC Player of the Week 3 times. Dalton Connect was it 4 times. Dalton Connect averaged about 4 points more per game. If Dalton Connect isn't playing for the Vols last year, I think Chaz Lanier is a guy that Tennessee fans would really gravitate towards, but he's playing in the shadow.
One, he's playing the shadow. 2, it's almost like playing out of position. This is almost like you go get, and he's not that good, but I'm trying to think of, you go get Josh Allen and you make him run the triple option, right? Like that's what you're Joe Burrow and you make him run the triple option. No, this makes sense. Like how they're using these players. And part of it's this, Barnes is who he is, right? Like defense is what he does. Also, this team's so good defensively. Like, I get it. You want to win every game, and this probably gives you the best chance to lose a game or two. But we all know who Barnes is too, and that, man, he could open this thing up and play in space. But you're going to give up 70 points, 71 points. You're going to score 85 instead of scoring 60. And I just think that it's very like Brent Venables. Like we've seen him with Oklahoma, where when he had Jeff Levy as his offensive coordinator, you go play Cincinnati. You beat them to death, letting Levy run his offense, and Butch Jones is crying on the sideline. Then you get into a close game, and you're like, wait a minute, slow this down. We got to protect my defense. Barnes needs to protect his defense. Barnes has got some Venables, and it's why, look, I think the second-round rig thing is unfair, but it's why he has that moniker is because he wants to win with defense, and people who try to win games in the 60s go home early. The problem is what you saw in that second Kentucky game. Kobe Brea hits 2 shots with a hand in his face, and all of a sudden you lose. That's just what it is. You're playing a close game, trying to play in the 60s. One guy hits 2 threes. That's 6 points. You then have to bring your defense out, and it leads to a lob, 8-point swing. And that's what it comes down to. You have one bad shooting night. They have a good shooting night, and you're done. So, which is why they get the 16 seeds or 1 seeds we've seen lose the 16 seeds. It was teams that play games in the 60s, and another team hit threes on them. And that's what happens. So, to me, I think that Chaz is having to play in a way that he should not have to play. And it's very Alvin Kamara, run him with inside zone all day long with Alvin Kamara. It's very similar to that. So I think he's very, very, very good, but he would be even better if you played him like you were planning to use him when you brought him in.
Let me ask you this real quick, though. Let me ask you, bank on it. Tennessee makes it past the Sweet 16. And it's brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
You banking on it past the Sweet 16?
No, not at all. Not even close. Not even close.
I'll flip a coin for it, but I'm not going to bank on it.
That's what look, do I believe this team can go 3 games without the guards shooting them out if they play quality opponents? No, you get the right draw. We watched what they did to LSU. They were awful against LSU and suffocated them. And so they can go suffocate mediocre teams. So if you get the right draw, could they get there? Yeah. Or if you start working the ball inside out again, playing in space, yeah, I believe they could get there. But if it's just you're trying to win games in the 60s, and it's just whether or not Zakai, who's not a good shooter, hits a lot of three-pointers. That's not a winning proposition for me, and I'm going to say absolutely not.
Well, the only pushback I want to have on this before you go is that, like, having listened to Rick Barnes talk a couple of days ago, are we sure that it's him not letting Chaz Lanier play this way and Chaz Lanier just not choosing to play this way? I mean, Rick Barnes seems very frustrated with Chaz Lanier's lack of aggression. I mean, we're talking about Chaz Lanier literally passed up a shot on a play that was drawn for him to shoot at the beginning of the second half against Texas, which scoring guards don't do.
No, and again, slow it down the half court. I think what he wants him to do is get tougher and not need to be more of such a modern player, not need to play in space. He wants to get tougher and in the half court, lower shoulder drive, and you'd like to see that. And I think that Chaz could be better. What Barnes said afterwards, I hope is hyperbole, because if he really wants 7 or 8 more shots out of Chaz Lanier, like it, yeah. I mean, that's what he just wanted to stand there and jump shoot with the hand, work the ball side to side twice, and he shoots 8 more threes or 4 more threes and drives 4 times and does a fadeaway. Maybe that's not a winning proposition, but
maybe he could just snowbird and not play defense.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, but instead it ends up being Philip Seymour Hoffman. You know what I mean? Like Kobe raindrops, and they're just clank, 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 and that's what it ends up being for Tennessee for a lot of games. I would say though, to your point, Caleb, to what Barnes, I agree with you that's what Barnes wants. He wants him to be a guard that's physical in the half court, will be Allen Iverson, and is willing to play ugly basketball, and will drive and put his shoulder into somebody, will get in the lane and draw contact. I just think that's not who he is. And so you're asking, it's definitely not who Milicic is. And we've seen when they play in space, man, Meshack's better when they play in space. Like, he's just better offensively when they play in space. You got to be willing to give up 70 points a game, not 60. And I don't know that Rick Barnes is willing to do that. I think he's been concerned about his team's legs. But look, and I know I keep using football analogies for basketball. Ohio State, they were worried about their team's legs. Ryan Day was. They try to make it more. They end up going super conservative. They lose to Michigan, and then Ryan Day says, all right, to heck with your legs. We're just going to open it up. I think Tennessee needs to do that, is to open it up. And I don't know if you have enough games to be able to polish that kind of play right now. I just also think Chaz is never going to, like, he's just not going to be that. So you're asking him, it's kind of asking him to be a fish out of water or a square peg in a round hole.
Yep, agreed. Will, 3-7 on the Sports Animal. We greatly appreciate you as always, buddy.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
We love it. Hit that like and subscribe button. More coming up. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Off the Hook Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your man.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history coming up, as I remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by our good friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates. Just go to that link right down below, facebook.com, Sports Treasures TN. Caleb, I got a poll question for you.
I'm ready. Let's roll. What's the poll question?
Dave's Knows It is somewhat noticeable, very noticeable, a major distraction. What do you think about that?
Oh, Lord. Dave.
Yes. So okay. you can go ahead and word it however you want to. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. A Tennessee tradition at rickterryjewelry.com. It is time for This Day in Tennessee Football, or This Day in Tennessee Sports History. And we get to that right now.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
This day in Tennessee sports history, what do you got, Caleb?
On this day in 1999, Tennessee beat 13th ranked Kentucky 68-61. To complete its first regular season sweep of the Wildcats in 20 years at that time. It was again one of the as you guys notice, a lot of my this days happened during the Jerry Green years because Jerry Green oversaw a lot of success that had actually been, I mean, again, that was unprecedented for Tennessee basketball when he was overseeing it at the time, which is really the funny part about it.
Yeah, he's a heck of a fella. Anything can happen when the silver fox is over there with his arms crossed on the sideline.
You are right.
SEC coach told me that one time.
That got Tennessee back into the top 25. This was a typical Jerry Green team. It was his second team. They entered the year preseason top 10 and then spent most of the year unranked, but then they got back into the top 25 with that win and finished in the top 25. That was when that was the year, Dave, they won their first game against Delaware 62-52, but you always bring this up. The next game they played Missouri State and lost by 30 in the NCAA tournament.
Southwest Missouri State. It wasn't even Missouri State. It was Southwest Missouri State. And that Delaware game, I don't know that Tennessee didn't play worse in the Delaware game, but they got blown out by 30 by Southwest Missouri State. So you would point to that. But that was the worst weekend of basketball I've ever witnessed. I've covered probably 6 or 7 NCAA tournaments. And if you count the women, if you count the second round, not the second round, but you know what I mean, the second setting, whatever you call it, which would be the Sweet 16, I probably covered like 10 or 12. That was definitely by far the worst weekend of basketball that I've ever seen. And it's not even close. I would have rather watched middle school girls play basketball.
What the age?
Wow. I've never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Tennessee a lot higher in a ranking that matters than you probably think. What's the SP Plus for those that don't know, Caleb?
So the SP Plus rankings, it's another one of the ESPN analytical rankings. This one is put together by also Bill Connolly. And basically they take returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history into account to determine exactly how good teams are. So it's a very effective model for determining teams and just how good they are going into different years. And, you know, in the past, they've been relatively accurate. We've covered them before. And honestly, they are shockingly in favor of Tennessee. But just so you guys know, last year, the SP Plus rankings, I'm trying to pull it up now, and I'm having a little bit of trouble, but they have...
I can tell because you're pounding your keyboard. The Tennessee...
Last year, they had Tennessee at number 16, and Tennessee definitely overachieved on that. So...
yeah, they did overachieve. Not massively. Where were they? Probably 8-ish.
Well, last year they were 16th in the SP Plus rankings, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That was 9th in the SEC. So the SEC was much more loaded in the SP Plus rankings last year than it is this year, which we're going to get to.
Okay, so they're number 8 this year. I don't think they're necessarily the 8th best team in the nation right now. Do you?
I think it's possible, but I'm not sure.
Thank you, Travis. Rudolph Hooker.
So here's the SP.
It looks like a hooker nipple. Sorry, go ahead.
The SP Plus rankings, they are 4th in the SEC. So number 2, the highest ranked SEC team is Alabama at number 2. Georgia is number 4. Texas is number 7, and Tennessee is number 8. So just behind Tennessee is Ole Miss at number 9, and then LSU at number 10, Texas A&M at number 11, and Missouri at number 15. I'm sorry, Texas A&M at number 12, and Missouri at number 15. That's the top 15. South Carolina 16th, Florida 17th. Oklahoma's 20th and Auburn's 23rd. That rounds up the top 25 for the SEC. As far as like different rankings, Tennessee's offensive SP Plus is number 22. Their defensive SP Plus, though, is number 4. And their special teams SP Plus is number 21. Now, caveat. This factors in Jamron McCoy returning. And obviously, Jamron McCoy is hurt. And they're not taking that into account.
Well, but he wouldn't drop them a whole point, would he? I mean, they wouldn't be 9th without him, would they?
We don't know how hurt he is, though. I mean, Tennessee right now is their SP Plus score is 21.3, and they're ahead of Ole Miss at 20.2. So there is a gap between them and Ole Miss, probably a bigger one between them and Texas, who's ahead of them. So I will agree with you on that I don't think they'd fall below Ole Miss. But the real point is this is a shockingly high number for the SP Plus rankings, like a shockingly high number, honestly.
Where would you have projected them?
I would have projected them in the 15 to 20 range, honestly. And so I'm kind of really shocked that they're where they are. I would have projected they would be in the 15 to 20 range because they lost so much talent on the offensive side. I mean, we just did a whole breakdown recently on returning production that Bill Connolly did, and Tennessee got wrecked on the offensive side. So just with that alone, I'd have thought they'd at least be in the 15 to 20 range, even with their returning talent on defense.
Yep, agreed. Click that like and subscribe button if you don't mind. Again, click that thumbs up button. We greatly appreciate that. Caleb, this would speak to what I believe has been Tennessee's plan, and that is to retain their players as opposed to going out and spending money on them. Tennessee with, 4 transfers as opposed to like a dozen this time last year. So, I mean, that means that Josh Heupel's doing in the offseason what he planned to do, right?
It does. It also speaks to because this tracks the combination of recruiting and transfers and who you still have in the system. It speaks to Tennessee's recruiting success that's been underrated, actually, in recent years. We've been talking about the transfer portal and recruiting out of high school. They're actually not recruiting poorly out of high school when you consider the talent they're retaining.
Well, maybe, but wouldn't you want your guys to have an opportunity to go pro after 3 years?
Well, think about it this way. Would you rather have the number 12 class and retain 75% of your players year to year? I'm not saying that's how many Tennessee's retain, but let me just say you have the number 12 class and you're retaining 75% of your players year to year, or have the number 4 class, but you only retain 40% of your players year to year.
I guess the previous one, not the latter, but the other.
Yeah. We're not thinking about the concept of retaining talent, keeping it out of the transfer portal, not just not losing it to the NFL. And that's something that we really got to start focusing on. And I think Tennessee does a good job of retaining key talent for the most part, which is a real big deal.
All right. Let's get to this comment because we love comments like this. Daniel says, love the show, guys. VFL from Big Stone Gap, Virginia. I'm about 2 hours northeast of Knoxville. Love where we are as an athletic department, guys. Who's better right now? As an overall athletic department, we'll get a little sidetracked here for a second. Or is that another topic for Monday? How many athletic departments as a whole are more successful right now than Tennessee? Alabama comes to mind with Nate Oates, but I don't really know what they're doing in terms of women's basketball. Obviously,
that's definitely a topic for another day. Let's stick on this real quick. I want to go down the list of the SP Plus and see. Let's go down the people who use on. Let's just go down Tennessee's schedule real quick and see what you think this holds up, Dave. So, Alabama's number 2. Tennessee visits Alabama. That's kind of a concern for them, right?
Yes.
And by the way, aren't we kind of underrating the leap we expect Alabama to take with another year under Kalen DeBoer because their first year head coaching pains are not there?
I don't know about leap, but I think they'll take a step. How about that?
Okay. Georgia's number 4. Now, Georgia number 4 going to Tennessee at number 8. That should mean that Tennessee should have a very legitimate chance. If Tennessee's not in that game, that's a big concern for the program, right? If they're not competing in that game.
If they're not within 10 points and in it in the fourth quarter, I think Tennessee fans have a right to be concerned. This is year number 5. You should compete with Kirby Smart or anybody else that is in your way for a championship. It's time.
Especially in Knoxville.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. So they don't play Ole Miss or LSU, who's just behind them. They don't play Texas A&M. They don't play Missouri. They don't play South Carolina, which is good. So they avoid a lot of these teams. But then Florida, number 17, they visit Florida. This is what I've been talking to you about. You don't think Florida's that much of a threat. I do, honestly. Just because of Tennessee's history in Gainesville.
No, I don't. Well, Tennessee's history in Gainesville, that changes things, obviously. But I don't know. The Florida game's so difficult. Don't you go into every year thinking, or at least most years, now I'm not going to say the 90s necessarily, but don't you think that Tennessee has had a legitimate shot in many of their games against Florida, but they just haven't shown up?
2013, 2015, and 2017, they should have won all 3 of those games. The only reason they didn't win in 2015 and 2017 in Gainesville was because while Jim McElwain was stupid, Butch Jones managed to be stupider. And it was straight up the movie Dumb and Dumber and those 2 coaches going at each other. So I agree, but not since 2017 have I seen Tennessee play a game in Gainesville where I really thought they should have won. Now, 2023, I thought going into the game, they should have won, but it wasn't like they were in the game when they played. So that's kind of an issue. A few more going down the list. So Arkansas's number 35, but they go to Knoxville. I am telling you, and I think Dave is telling you, guys, there is a 100% chance Tennessee beats Arkansas and beats them handily.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yep. Kentucky number 40. Tennessee goes to Kentucky. They're going to beat Kentucky, even though Kentucky's 40, because guess what, guys? It's Kentucky. So
it's Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky's Kentucky. Vanderbilt is number 54. Vanderbilt goes to Knoxville. Again, a virtual guarantee. Tennessee's going to beat Vanderbilt. Mississippi State down at number 65. Tennessee is going to beat Mississippi State. The only other one, I forgot this one, Oklahoma at number 20. Oklahoma number 20 going to Knoxville. I think Tennessee should win that game, though, don't you? Even though Tennessee beat Oklahoma last year?
Yeah, I think they should win that game. I think Oklahoma takes a step back because I don't believe in their head coach.
I don't either. And it's funny. Josh Heupel hired Seth Littrell. I was critical of the Seth Littrell hire as an analyst, but I think Seth Littrell's poor offense last year at Oklahoma had much more to do with the situation he was in at Oklahoma than it had to do with his offensive acumen himself.
All right. Any other notes on the SP ratings before we move on?
Syracuse is down at number 57. Tennessee opens the year against them. So look, Tennessee, if you look at these SP ratings, they have a path to 11-1 because there's only one team above them that they play on the road, and that would be Alabama. But they get a huge break avoiding Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M, Missouri, and South Carolina. To avoid all 5 of those teams is a huge deal, but they do play the top 2, and they do play Florida and Oklahoma. So I think overall Tennessee should be this is a very good sign for Tennessee going forward that they're number 8.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, and I've got something to share with you a little bit later. We'll visit with Andy White of Ted Russell. We love him, and finally decided to pull the trigger in the best buying experience I can ever imagine. That's what you get from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Parkside Drive or Kingston Pike, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer when it comes to Ford and Lincoln, and they want to make sure that you drive off that lot and you're in a completely happy place. I was yesterday in my new vehicle from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. I'll share it with you on Off the Hook Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Give me an update, Caleb, on our poll question.
Dave's knows it is somewhat noticeable, very noticeable. A major distraction, not noticeable at all. Do you want the answers?
I do.
All right. Somewhat noticeable leads at 50%.
Oh.
A major distraction is 25%, but not noticeable at all is 19%, and very noticeable is 6%.
It's very noticeable. Some people are being nice out there with a 19%. My goodness, I'm embarrassed to go out in public. I got a new poll question for you. Ready?
All right.
You would rather, or I would rather, jump real high or run real fast. I know they go hand in hand, but they didn't with James Pearce. He didn't have a great vertical jump, only 30 some inches, but ran a really good 40 at 4.47. So would you rather run real fast or jump real high, Caleb?
Ooh. Well, given the fact that NBA money is way better than NFL money, I'd rather jump real high because I could get an NBA contract then.
I would just want to dunk. Like I got this close. I got my fingers like right at the rim one time, and I thought I was 18, and I thought, oh, well, I'll dunk eventually, right? And you don't realize you start going the other direction at that point if you don't continue to play. I had 2 goals physically: is to bench 300 pounds and dunk a 10-foot goal. Got one of those.
What is more important in basketball, quickness or vertical?
Well, we're kind of splitting hairs because they go hand in hand.
They do.
Muscles.
They do.
And have we got that poll question up yet? Because I want to include bench press a lot. Oh,
I've already got it. It's run real fast, jump real high.
Right.
Now, the crazy part is, no one talks about this because like people always talk about like. It's funny because we can, he's the most famous athlete of the late 20th century. But Dave, do you realize how underrated it is? How freakishly athletic Michael Jordan was coming into the NBA? And it's just not talked about enough, I feel like, because it's like we just think of his greatness and his aura, but like, you know what his vertical was, right?
I've heard this before. I don't know that I believe it.
48 inches. No, it was clocked. And guess what his 40 time was?
I don't believe this.
No, he clocked it with the Birmingham Barons at 30 when he went to play baseball. He clocked a 4.340.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Why don't you believe it? I mean, he was freakishly athletic.
Well, no, but I think it shortchanges his mental approach to the game to some extent, don't you?
Well, no, because I do think he had a solid mental approach, but I think the root of what made him the greatest was how athletic he was. He was freakishly athletic. Nobody in the NBA was on that level of athleticism at the time. No one has ever come close. And his hand size was huge, which is why he didn't turn the ball over that much. Funny enough.
I've got huge hands. You ever buy me gloves like for Christmas, like isotoners via Dan Marino? Be sure and get the big ones.
Or I could get you a little bit smaller so you can use it to go kill somebody and then say the glove doesn't fit. It's
right. That's absolutely right.
But yeah, no, it's the craziest Michael Jordan stat is actually of all of the like 100 players with the highest usage rate, he's the only one to not turn it over 3 times a game. He turned it over less than 2 times a game.
Interesting. All right. It is time for Stat of the Day. Stat of the Day is brought to you by our fantastic friends at the UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. Stat of the Day is right now.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb, what's our stat of the day, sir?
There are 2 Tennessee baseball players who are national stat category leaders right now. And Levi Clark leads the nation in batting average and slugging percentage at 600 and 1,400 right now.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Liam Doyle leads the nation in strikeouts as a pitcher with 25.
Did you know Levi actually wears Wranglers? A lot of people don't know that. What's your favorite brand of jeans, by the way?
I'm not really a brand guy for jeans.
I've found that the Lucky brand fits me well. Have you heard of them? Have you seen them in the mall?
Yes, I know, because you're a girl. But I'm sorry, I'm trolling you, Dave. The only thing I hate about jeans is that skinny jeans are now out of style. And I hate that because I'm really skinny and I looked good in skinny jeans. But apparently with the Gen Z era, if you wear skinny jeans, you're fat shaming people who can't wear skinny jeans. That's what they say. So
you didn't look that good. I got to be honest with you. I saw you at SEC Media Days.
I looked great in skinny jeans at SEC Media Days. What are you talking about, liar?
Dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Go to hemphousechatwith2ts.com. Hemphousechatwith2ts.com. Later today, we will draw for that John Henderson mini helmet autographed by John Henderson. We'll give that away. So if you want to get on in that drawing, all you have to be is of the channel, and those of you that are bring you in as well, and we'll spin for that later in the program. You also, if you sign up for the channel, you get a gift certificate to Hound Dogs. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. ncaa.com. Speaking of that neck of the woods, I want to thank our friends at Joe Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. All right. It is time to take a look at Tennessee's defensive tackles as we give you a spring preview. The Vols will be 9th, and it's hot cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Heatandair.com. Say something smart because this.
All right, here.
Say something smart.
Why
Let's go ahead and get to
why don't we do another stat of the day real quick? That'll be interesting. Y'all ready for this? Since we talked about the swamp.
Okay.
17 quarterbacks since 1973 have started for Tennessee in the swamp, and only one has come out with a win ever.
That'd be Casey Clausen, right?
Yep, and he did it twice.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
By the way, I was supposed to call it. I'm making a note because I wanted Simmons thing goes from recruiting analyst to a general manager at Vanderbilt, and then we need to reach out to Casey. We haven't had Casey on yet, and he's fantastic.
Let's go to a commercial break real
Dave's
quick
freezing
before
up.
we do this next topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Oh, get the stat of it. Put me on the other side. What's going on with my Wi-Fi?
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios as their East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. And we're going to share what I purchased at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln yesterday. Caleb, are you super excited? You can come down. We'll drop the top, drive around. No? Not so much? It's not worth the trip?
I like my beat down low and my top lid back.
Okay, well, let's pretend that didn't happen. As coming up, Andy White will join us a little bit later on the program. Let's try this. Are we going to try this hot or cold deal again? Yes.
I wonder if someone ever like
called me out. Hey,
no, that Andy White. I wonder if someone ever prefaced like his name as a joke, like he's black, Andy White.
Wow, let's leave the jokes to me.
Stand hot or cold. Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. CityHeatandAir.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
I don't even know what to say about that joke, to be honest with you. Let's drop that on him, see what he thinks. All right, Tennessee's defensive tackles are on tap. Let's go ahead and dive into those, as you can read about it on offthehooksports.com. As a whole, I would think Tennessee's defensive tackles would be down. Are you hot or cold on that notion?
I am actually cold on that notion. No, I'm including defensive line. So I'm including the edge rushers, the guys that play with their hands.
Okay.
In the dirt.
Had defensive tackles on the rundown. So let's go.
That was on me. That was my mistake. I just realizing what Rodney Garner coaches. He coaches everything and it makes them interchangeable. So defensive line as a whole, I am actually high on. And that I get what James Pearce did yesterday. I get what what Tennessee's losing. But I'm high on the defensive line, and I think they still have enough depth. Jimmy Hines, of all people, convinced me on that. So I guess we could start with the interior. If we want to start with the interior,
let's go ahead and do that, and we'll list off the players headed into spring practice. Are you hot or cold on that individual? Now, some of these guys probably will be held out, as you always take precautionary measures if anybody's beat up. But we're going to go ahead and say headed into the season. Jackson Moy.
Paris Hilton, man. Paris Hilton.
Hot.
That is hot.
Yeah, I love the way he plays. He's a leverage guy. And I think that with that, Jackson Moy is the perfect complement into the system.
All right. Let's move a little to the outside. Joshua Joseph's at the Leo position.
That's hot.
Oh, sorry. Because I'm cold on him. I think Tennessee takes a step down at that Leo position with James Pearce, even though he wasn't that productive.
Oh, no. I'm cold on him for a different reason than you. I think there's a couple other Leos that are about to step up and be absolutely deadly. And I already mentioned one that we'll get to in a second. And Joshua Joseph.
Jordan Ross.
That's hot.
All-American.
Celine.
All-American. This dude is going to be a superstar, guys. Jordan Ross will be better than James Pearce this year.
Okay. I'm not willing to go that far, but you've been pounding that drum.
They've gone, basically Byron Young to James Pearce. That was Joey Kent to Marcus Nash. Jordan Ross is Peerless Price, who was clearly better than Kent and Nash.
Okay. All right. Bryson Eason, hot or cold?
Hot. I think he's perfect for the interior. He was good last year. He's going to be better this year with another year of experience. I think Bryson Eason is with Omar Norman Lott and Amari Thomas gone, Bryson Eason is kind of going to be the anchor of the defensive line in the middle.
Okay, I want to get to Dominique Bailey. Again, it is hot or cold, brought to you by City Heat and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Dominique Bailey at the defensive end position.
I'm actually still pretty hot on Dominique Bailey. I think he's a solid player. I think he's a rotational guy. But I'm cold on him as a full-time starter. Hot on him as a rotational guy and a guy that can at least keep the depth going for Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm cold on him. Tyree West.
Hot. that we talk about, like there's a Leo and then there's like a defensive end that plays with his hand in the dirt the whole time, which I think Tyree West kind of does and can move between tackle and end. He's going to be the 3 technique, 5 technique guy. He's going to be the best 3-5 technique hybrid guy that Rodney Garner's ever had at Tennessee.
Okay, that's pretty strong. That's pretty strong. All right, so Tyree Weathersby, hot or cold?
Cold.
Yeah.
Cold Tyree Weathersby.
I mean, I think he's just. I mean, he's going to be good. David Hobbs, I'm cold on because I just thought he would have a bigger impact by now. He was very highly touted, highly recruited, and he's now headed into his junior year and hasn't done much.
Yeah, the only reason to potentially be hot on him is that if you think Dominic Bailey is going to be pushed down a little bit, then maybe David Hobbs will start to finally emerge. But you are right. It's now. I thought he was going to see more action last year, and he didn't. So there is kind of a concern about that.
Nope, I agree completely. All right, anybody else you want to hit up here on Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning?
What about Emmanuel Okoye?
Ooh, good one.
They moved him to. Do you think now, with a year in a system, that he could actually be a dangerous player?
Could, yes. I always wonder about these guys from Europe or somewhere else. I mean, did they really make the transition? So I guess I'll say I'm cold until I actually see it, but he does have a year under his belt. What makes you hot about him if you are? I mean, is it 2 sacks? Is it 10 tackles for losses this season? I mean, what does he have to do to prove that we should be hot on Emmanuel Okoye?
That's
maybe just registers 8 to 10 tackles and is part of the rotation. Like Rodney Garner runs how many guys? Like I think Emmanuel Okoye will be in that rotation some. And I guess that's where I land with this.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that they can do that.
And there's a few there are a few also early enrollees, I believe.
Go ahead and draw those up as portions of the program are brought to you by our great friends at City Heat and Air Conditioning. We mentioned that 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. I know that they came out to do some work on our house, and someone else had said, "Oh, you needed a whole new unit," and they're like, "No, they gave us a part and took care of it for about a 10th price. Actually, less than that." All right, Caleb, who's up next?
All right, so a few early enrollees we want to get to, and we're going to start with Isaiah Campbell, who is a 4-star out of Durham, North Carolina. I'm cold on him. I think he's too small right now. I think he'll get there, but I think he's too small right now.
You should be cold on all the incoming guys because playing on the defensive line is usually not going to happen. When's the last time that Tennessee's had a freshman make an impact on the defensive line?
Oh, the defensive line.
Can't think of one.
That's a really good question. I'm not even sure. I mean, didn't Albert Hainsworth get action in 99 as a freshman?
A little bit. And then I thought they kind of pulled him back a little bit because he was getting a little too wild.
Yeah. That's a tough one. You're right. It's tough to think about, but just a few more to run through. I mean, we got Marion Dye talking about him. He's more of an edge rusher. I am
related to Marion Barry. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh my gosh, no, he's not. But not that I'm actually potentially high on him as a guy that they could use as another edge rusher just for a change of pace. Jaden Lofton, cold on him, and Ethan Utley, cold on him. I'm cold. I'll just say it. I'm cold on Ethan Utley, just his future period. And then Charles House and Nick
Wow,
Moore.
what do you not like about Ethan Utley?
I feel like he is 6'3", 275. I don't think he'll be able to maintain athleticism if he puts on the necessary 20 pounds to get to where he needs to go. So I'm sorry.
Taylor Calhoun's like, man, he's Utley's dead to me.
Now, funny enough, Nick Moore is listed as a defensive lineman on some sites and an offensive lineman elsewhere, but I think he's going to end up being an offensive lineman. So I don't think that's somebody that we should focus on. And Charles House is not an early enrollee, so he won't be around with the defensive tackles in the spring, to my knowledge. So yeah.
Quality Tire Pros, man, they are fantastic right there in the Chattanooga area. Quality Tire Pros serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said hello. And we are going to talk some basketball and some Lady Vols. As no, we're not going to call for Kim Caldwell's head. I see that post out there. What are you thinking? As portions of the program brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
We kind of got people riled up a little bit when we suggested that Brent Hubbs or Austin Price become the general manager for Tennessee's football program. That was a topic of conversation in Knoxville for those of you that aren't around the Knoxville area. So, yeah, there was a couple of former Vols that didn't like the fact that we would suggest that Hubbs or Price could head up Tennessee's football program, but I still believe they could.
I think there's a very good chance they could. And
it ain't rocket science.
No, I totally agree.
All right. Kalen DeBoer talks about revenue sharing, suggests Alabama is in trouble when it comes to NIL. You were beating the drum early on this. I was like, man, what's Caleb talking about? Surely to goodness they'll throw some cash for Kalen DeBoer and make sure that he is able to compete, because you don't have the Saban discount, the Saban advantage any longer. But he suggests that Alabama is in trouble with NIL.
Well, he's implying it, and I don't think he meant to imply it. So he was speaking with On Three's Pete Nikos, and he said that the advent of revenue sharing with players will help the Crimson Tide because it will create a more even playing field and bring college football to, quote, real recruiting. Now, this is in response to, as we know, the House settlement. They're allowing schools to distribute up to $21 million to players, but third-party boosters can still make NIL payments to supplement the roster building. And it sounds like DeBoer is calling for revenue sharing even on that. And
now, for those that don't know, what would revenue sharing be?
That's the thing. It's like, I don't know how I don't even know. How do you revenue share direct NIL payments from boosters?
No,
that's not possible.
No, who's sharing the revenue?
Basically, like, okay, the concept of revenue sharing is whether you're Alabama or Vanderbilt, whatever the schools bring in, it's all gone into a pot, and they're all given the money evenly to distribute it.
Okay,
that's revenue sharing.
That's what I was asking. Is it player to player or school to school? Well, that's stupid.
Well, I don't mind it with the money the school directly pays the players. NFL does revenue sharing, and it works out perfectly. So I don't mind that. I think the NFL took over the national landscape because they got into revenue sharing early. Now, the issue is with NIL, which is, again, I don't know how you revenue share. Like, Dave, if a player goes to Tennessee and Ted Russell Ford gives them a call and says, hey, you want to do a commercial for me? Here's $500,000. How is the NCAA or the House supposed to step in and say, well, that money's got to be taken from you now and be split to other players at other schools? That's not possible, right? There's no possible way to regulate that. But here's what Kalen DeBoer is calling for. His quote on it was, he says, quote, the regulation is really important to the game itself. That regulation where we're all on an even playing field from the revenue sharing standpoint helps us, just because now it comes down to what is important in recruiting, and that's relationships and sharing your vision. People that want to be aligned with your vision and then come to a place like Alabama that has the resources, the tradition, the regulation, and having a more balanced playing field helps our situation. It allows us to get where it was at one point just a few years back, where recruiting is real recruiting, not someone who's going to put in the highest bid, unquote. And the only reason Kalen DeBoer would say something like that is if Alabama's boosters aren't ponying up the money he needs them to pony up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny we throw in this NIL and paying players and all this thing. And you mentioned this earlier in the week, and it caught my ear. At the end of the day, aren't we still talking about talent evaluation? because it was talent evaluation, whether or not to offer a guy and pay him under the table. And now it's whether or not to give him 100,000 or 200,000 or 50,000. It's still ultimately about talent evaluation.
It's Moneyball. Talent evaluation is this guy should be worth 300,000 on the open NIL market, and we can get him for 50,000. The same way the Oakland A's and Moneyball back in the day, what would they do? They weren't just looking for the best players based on sabermetrics. They were looking for the best players that they could get on a deal because no one knew they were good. Like they were basically saying, according to our analytics, this guy should be worth 900,000. We can get him for 300,000, or this guy should be worth 9 million. We can get him for 2 million. Now, that's talent evaluation. Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I mean, if you're at Alabama, why did Kalen DeBoer take the Alabama job, Dave? You move your family from Washington to Alabama because you don't want to have to do talent evaluation, right? You want to be able to recruit.
Yep.
So
agree.
how much? I'll ask you. Does Alabama boosters just not have a lot of money, or are they just stupid? And do they think that people are just unwilling to pony up the money?
I think they're not used to it yet, and I think it'll take the next coach. That's why I think DeBoer's in trouble.
So how many coaches are they going to have to run through, though? I mean, we're talking about a program that ran through how many coaches in the past? And by the way, this isn't new. Let's be fair. You'd know this. Before NIL, boosters still had to pony up money and be forward-thinking, right? And not rest on laurels. And I mean, wasn't part of Tennessee's decade of dysfunction boosters saying, well, don't you know we're Tennessee and players are lucky to come to this school? Wouldn't they think that a lot of times?
Oh, well, I think there was all kinds of messes going on. I would really have trouble highlighting one, wouldn't you? I mean,
I would too.
Bad coaches, players with attitude problems. I mean, it was a mess.
Basically, so what you're saying, though, is the boosters still think it's a privilege to go to Alabama, right? And you should be grateful that you're there.
Yeah, I guess, Caleb. If that's their attitude, then Tennessee's in good shape. I mean, I think that Tennessee has to continue to spend, and if they don't, then they're going to fall behind. And I think that's with every school. If any school thinks that they can just sit back and not spend to either keep their players or go out and get more, they're in trouble. And that budget needs to grow each and every year by 10% or so.
So do you agree with me that Alabama's calling, that DeBoer's calling for this because Alabama's boosters aren't ponying up?
Yeah, I don't think they're used to ponying up. And here's the other thing. At the end of the day, Caleb, it's kind of like two businesses. There's the NIL function, and then there's still the Alabama Booster Club that has to raise money to keep up facilities. Now, those guys probably get paid. Think about this for a second. On commission on donations, right? Or they have some sort of escalating salary or something, a bonus system. Well, they're not going to want to give that up and say, oh, go spend that money with the NIL guys. They're going to be competitive in a sales position and try to keep all the money they can, even if it might not be the best thing for their university.
So what you're saying is for the boosters now, it's now becoming the NIL. I mean, a lot. So what you're saying is boosters for the longest time, their boosting of a program were partially business moves too.
Yeah.
And
I've
it's hard
talked to Jimmy Himes about this. So Jimmy's a little bit older than me. He has older friends. You know, that talent tax or whatever they called it, the talent fee, that didn't sit well with a bunch of older fans because then you're mandated to participate in NIL because you're donating to the university and that's part of your donation. Well, that's not what there are a lot of in the older generation that think you're getting a University of Tennessee scholarship, that should be enough. And they don't want to be a part of that. I think you're fighting that battle as well.
I could see that. I mean, I could see you absolutely fighting that battle. And that battle probably seems a lot harder to fight at Alabama, but I want to push back on something DeBoer said where he said it goes back to real recruiting. Why shouldn't negotiations for NIL be a part of real recruiting? Why shouldn't a player be allowed to do that? I mean, I guess what they're saying is the money you can offer just outweighs every other thing that goes into recruiting. But so what? That's still something that's valuable that you offer, isn't it? You still weigh that against your NFL prospects, your success, the school experience you want to have. I mean, those are all still factors, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the factors. If a young man, that's why was it the Hopkins kid who went to Minnesota out of left field?
Oh, the Hopkins kid out of Nashville.
See, I thought that was strange because did they just pony up to get one guy to Nashville in hopes that could lead to a pipeline there? Was that the theory?
Justin Hopkins is his name.
Yes.
Yes. No, I think I told you my theory on that because he actually wasn't that highly recruited. PJ Fleck is the Butch Jones of the Big Ten. And PJ Fleck wanted the narrative that he got a kid out of SEC country. That's all that was about. Was he's going to all of his boosters and all the media members at Minnesota right now. I'm saying, look at our recruiting guys. We got a kid out of SEC country. That's all that was about. He just wanted to be able to sell that to people. Again, it was a very Butch Jones move.
Well,
honestly.
And you got to remember, Nashville is the biggest city north in the SEC. I guess you could argue Lexington, but
no, Nashville's way bigger than Lexington, significantly so.
I'm aware. But Nashville is way bigger now. And in terms of college football talent, in terms of college football talent, there's no comparison between Lexington, which Lexington, I don't care how big the city, it's roughly the size of Knoxville, right? I don't care how big it is. They don't produce any talent.
No. And think about it. This is Nashville Central Time Zone. Minnesota's on the Mississippi River. You just go straight down the Mississippi River and 3 hours east on I-40, get a kid out of Nashville. You go back up to Minnesota and you tell a couple of media. I mean, again, this was a steal headlines move. This was a New York Jets signing Tim Tebow. I want to get some front page headlines in the Minneapolis, St. Paul Tribune, whatever the newspapers are up there, and tell people I got a kid out of Nashville. It was a very insecure move by PJ Fleck. He spent all of his time recruiting that and at the sacrifice and to the detriment of getting a roster building, honestly. So that's what that was about. That's also a very old school way of thinking recruiting wise, because we're talking the NIL age. But I will say that, like, the only thing I'll say with Kalen DeBoer that's kind of interesting about him saying this is that, I mean, you know, we're underrating Alabama's still recruiting well. They had the third ranked recruiting class this past year. Now they don't really, so I wonder if this has to do with this year right now. They have the 34th ranked class, only 3 commits, but it's early. So I don't think anybody, do you think there's some interior panic going on with Kalen DeBoer's recruiting right now?
Yes. Yeah. And I don't think it's Kalen DeBoer's fault. I don't think he has the NIL support behind him.
No, he doesn't. And I don't understand I mean, I've told you guys this, like what we talk about with Notre Dame and the way they think college football starts and ends with them. That's actually how Tuscaloosa is. People in Alabama think the college football world starts and ends with them. And you are lucky if you grace the presence of Tuscaloosa in the statue of Bear Bryant.
Yep. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we'll visit with Andy White and we'll discuss my new vehicle. But next, we're going to discuss Kim Caldwell and we're going to give away this John Henderson helmet. Believe it or not, it's been a delay, but it's autographed by John Henderson. It's a mini helmet. It's awesome. So we'll go ahead and pull those names and get the magic wheel spinning here in just a moment. Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. More to come. Stay tuned. 2 minutes.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
And here we go. It was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb, what do you make of Kim Caldwell losing just when it seemed like they were kind of on a roll here? Your thoughts on the Lady Vols?
Yeah, this is the Lady Vols' worst loss of the year, and it was the first time they really laid an egg that just looked bad. They lost to Kentucky 82-58. Kentucky didn't shoot well from three. They were 5 of 21 from three at 23.8%, and the Lady Vols were not much better at 6 of 29 at 20.7%. Doesn't explain the different disparity, but the biggest difference is Tennessee was out rebounded 52-31, largely because Tennessee missed a lot of shots in the paint. They were 23-74 in the paint, and Kentucky, even though they weren't good from three, inside the paint, they were 29-45. So they were just dominant inside, and Tennessee just couldn't handle their size. But Kim Caldwell really didn't make any excuses for him. I'm going to show this real quick. This is what she said after the game, talking about Kentucky dominating in the half court. And she called out her team again. Here's Kim Caldwell right after the game.
Consistent effort. I don't think they're bigger than us, so we knew that they were going to get some, but I don't think we rebounded as a team. I think we kind of just left people in there to dry, trying to out-rebound one-on-one. And when you don't have the height advantage, you can't do that. And then I don't think we crashed very hard in the first half at all. We missed a lot of shots, and we had a lot of opportunities where we could have at least tried to go get an offensive rebound, and I don't even know that we went and got a paint touch. I think we just kind of stood.
So there's Kim Caldwell calling out the effort again. I think we stood there and watched paint touch. I don't even think we tried to get an offensive rebound.
All right. What do you make of this loss? Is this a hit the wall loss?
I think this is a matchup problem. Kentucky's matchup against Tennessee, it's just such a massive disadvantage for Tennessee at this moment that the only way they were going to be able to win this game was to force a lot of turnovers and hit a lot of threes. And they didn't hit a lot of threes, and they forced 20 turnovers, but it wasn't enough. And I think the combination of them not shooting well from three, not hitting enough, playing on the road, and truth be told, feeling themselves a little bit. I think, as Kim Caldwell just said, calling out the effort, those three things together cost them. Now, Talaysia Cooper, she did her part. She had 25 points and was 11 of 22 from the field. She tried to get into the paint a lot, but I mean, the paint, the defensive, the paint inside, with the half court defense in the paint was absolutely abysmal. And it was a huge issue. They just weren't big enough. And when you're not big enough, you got to shoot well and you got to force a lot of turnovers. And lack of shooting well really costs them. This is where the size is not that big of a deal for the recruiting next year. They need enough players that if 2 or 3 are having an off day shooting, 2 or 3 others are still on. So they'll always have options from 3. And they just don't have that last night. They just don't have that right now.
All right. So if you had to bet your bottom dollar that this is a hit the wall loss, a feeling yourself lost, feeling good about yourself, or whatever the case may be. In fact, we could make that a poll question if you want. To me, this is a hit in a wall loss. I think you're going to see another bad loss, and I think you're going to see an early exit from the NCAA tournament. I wondered if this would happen with this Lady Vols team. They tried to go as deep as they could, but I just don't know how many elite players they have, Caleb. How many elite players does Tennessee have right now?
I mean, hardly any. I'll just say that. So here's the poll question, and I'll see if you want to bet. Lady Vols loss to Kentucky was a hit the wall loss, bad matchup, or lack of effort. And
I think it's a hit the wall loss.
I think it's bad matchup, lack of effort. I think it's those two things combined. I think, again, Kentucky size made it really hard for the Lady Vols inside. They couldn't get it. They did not want to turn it into a half-court game, and they turned it into a half-court game. Of course, going 6 of 12 from the free throw line. They're just little things that, if a few little things had gone differently, you would have gotten a huge difference on the margin. What if Z Spearman, who was 0 of 10 on the night, 0 of 4 from 3, what if, and Jewel Spears, who was 2 of 3 from 3, who are both solid 3-point shooters, what if Z Spearman and Jewel Spear, between the 0 of 7, what if they hit 3 of those threes? What if Tess Darby off the bench, instead of going 1 of 6 from 3, hits 2 of those threes? So what if Tennessee hits like 5 more threes and is 11 of 20, 29? Then you got 15 points here. What if they hit about 3 more free throws? You're talking 18 points. All of a sudden, you're looking at an 82-76 game. And then what if they show just a little bit more effort in the paint? I mean, you know what I mean? It's one of those where, this is what happens in basketball. You got a team that it's literally the Bobby Knight quote. You got one team that plays a little bit better than they are, another team that plays not as good as they're capable of playing, and the shooting percentages are, one team is just red hot shooting, the other team's not, and you get a huge difference on the margins in that way. And that happens sometimes.
Yeah. This Lady Vols team, to me, is all about they have things have to break their way, right? They can't go out there like some of the old Pat Summitt teams or Gino Ariema teams and dictate the game. They do have to have some breaks to beat a good team.
They have to have breaks to beat a team like Kentucky. I wouldn't say a good team. Kentucky's just a specific type of matchup issue for them. It's like, do you remember the first Bruce Pearl team? Even before they hit that wall later in the year, I remember they had a bad loss to Oklahoma State right after beating Texas. And the reason was Oklahoma State had a 6'11 guy and a 7-foot guy, and Bruce Pearl was running a 6'4 guy at the power 4 position at the time. So there was just nothing they could do at that point. So you just needed a few breaks. It's kind of like that situation. Tennessee can beat some very good basketball teams, but their issue all year has been really dominant teams in the paint. The South Carolinas, the LSUs, those schools. Kentucky is one of the biggest teams in the paint. They play in the paint. They live and die in the paint. So it was just going to be hard for Tennessee to win that type of game without a red hot shooting night, extra effort on the glass, things like that. And that just didn't happen.
Does Tennessee have another ugly loss? Would you consider this an ugly loss? Yes. Right?
Absolutely.
They have another ugly loss.
No, they close out the regular season on Sunday against Georgia at home. They're going to beat Georgia. Georgia's a bad basketball team. So Tennessee's going to beat Georgia. They're going to finish the year 22-7, 9-7 in the SEC. They're going to go to the they're going to play on Monday in the not Monday. They're going to play on the first day of the SEC tournament, but I think they're going to be forgiven for that. And then we'll see where they go from there. But their next ugly loss will be in the SEC tournament. And let's be honest, how many times have I said, who cares about the SEC tournament? So,
well, that wouldn't even count for an ugly loss to me. An ugly loss is they get beat by 10, 15 in the NCAA tournament. Or you said, who do they have left in the regular season?
Georgia at home.
I'm going to be honest with you. Are the Lady Bulldogs any good?
No, Lady Bulldogs are terrible. Lady Bulldogs are absolutely terrible. So,
so an ugly loss would be just losing to Georgia, correct?
Yeah, an ugly loss. Just a loss to Georgia would be bad.
Right.
Honestly.
No, that wouldn't be good. And where do you see Tennessee seated right now on the ladies' side?
I'm gonna say 4 or 5 seed. And now that's a huge difference, by the way, because a 4 seed you get to host, and a 5 seed you have to go on the road for the first weekend of an NCAA tournament game. So you obviously don't want to be the 5 seed. But I'm going to say 4 seed for now. That's where I'm going to land on that. But this loss may have pushed them to a 5 seed.
5 seed. That's troubling to me. But I will say this, and I said this about the men in reverse. They always seem to get kind of the short end of the stick when it came to the seeding. I've always thought the men get the the women get the good end of that. Didn't it always feel like with Pat Summitt's teams that they were a little bit higher of a seed than you thought they should be?
Not just Pat Summitt's teams, the teams after Pat Summitt. There are some there was a Holly Warlick team, and I believe it was her last year as coach of the Lady Vols, where they made the NCAA tournament. And I mean, they made the NCAA tournament literally on name only. They had no business going into that tournament. They did not have the resume whatsoever, and they got in. So I think I think that could be enough to get the Lady Vols a 4 seed. Charlie Crean's bracketology is still projecting them to have a 4 seed. As far as the net rankings go right now for Tennessee, they are number 12, which is within the 3 to 4 seed range. Taking that into account, I think they'll be a 4 seed. Yeah. Looking at all of that.
All right. Can they play their way into a 3? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know women's basketball like you. I mean, does the SEC tournament count for more since they have more time theoretically to seed them? Maybe.
No, because I think the principle is they don't want to. Part of it's laziness, but the other part of it is that the selection committee has decided in recent years they don't want to overvalue the conference tournaments because they think that it's too much. They're too much of gimmicks, and so they prefer your regular season resume. So yeah, that's pretty much. I don't think there's an issue. I think Tennessee's pretty much locked into whatever the seed they're going to be now.
All right. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We are going to give away that John Henderson helmet if you can hang tight in just 2 minutes, and we'll visit with Andy White of Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. We enjoy him like there's no tomorrow. We'll get his thoughts on the Lady Vols as well. As our poll question is, Caleb?
Our poll question is, Lady Vols loss to Kentucky was a hit-a-wall loss, bad matchup, lack of effort. Bad matchup leads at 50%, lack of effort at 40%. And Dave, you're the only one saying hit-a-wall at 10%. And somebody else is too. Only one person agrees with you.
Okay. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. I'll share with you what I purchased from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Up next, Caleb's on the edge of his seat.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. Banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, we're giving away this John Henderson helmet. Pretty awesome. Autographed by John Henderson. I think he's Caleb's. Is that your favorite player of all time?
No, my favorite Tennessee player of all time is probably Peerless Price, because I love the clutch gene of Peerless Price.
Yeah, he had it. Do you believe there is a clutch gene? Do you believe some people have that?
I believe some people have. I believe you can develop it. I do believe you can develop it. I think a lot of it. I mean, I think the clutch gene is just how you like where you are psychologically and mentally. And now, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like a mental health thing. Like if you see a therapist and learn how to channel your emotions right, I think you can develop a clutch gene.
Okay.
So, but Peerless had it.
We're going to give away this John Henderson helmet right now, as I'm going to share the screen, as we'll get that right there. And there we go. And can you see the screen, Caleb?
I see the screen.
All right. So if you're a member of the Patreon, then you're eligible. If you're a member of the channel for just $4.99, we appreciate that. And you should have your Hound Dogs gift certificate by now, just as a welcome gift. But you are also eligible for this. So here we go. We're spinning the wheel for the John Henderson helmet. Autographed by Big John right here. And the winner is Striker. Just barely. So congratulations to Striker. You need to email me and I'll put the email right in the chat as dave@offthehooksports.com, and I will make sure you get your prize, because it is almost impossible for us to communicate with you going the other way. So coming up, Andy White will visit with us as we are broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare. Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, I did a thing at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, and I'm so incredibly happy that I did. Best buying process, car buying process that I've ever gone through. It was just a matter of signing papers. It was just a matter of picking out what I wanted. And there it is. Oh, yeah. Went with the black Jeep 4-door thanks to Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. And I'm telling you, the buying process was so incredibly easy. I can't even begin to explain. I did the overnight test drive. I came back. I decided I wanted it. They already had me approved. It was absolutely unbelievable. So please check out Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. And you can go online and see their entire inventory right there. So absolutely love Ted Russell Ford Lincoln and certainly appreciate them. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Have a fantastic day.